Are you trying? Okay. Hello. Okay. A beautiful morning to us all today, all our healthcare professionals, the hospital community, ladies and gentlemen. It is a delight for me to welcome you to this webinar to commemorate the World Antimicrobial Awareness Week 2021. Spread awareness, stop resistance. That's the theme for this year's celebration. The World Antimicrobial Awareness Week is celebrated between 18th to 24th of November every year. And it aims to increase awareness of global antimicrobial resistance and to also encourage best practices among the general public, health workers, our farmers, animal health professionals, and even policymakers, so as to avoid further emergence and spread of drug-resistant infections. This webinar is facilitated by the Drug Information and Education Units of the Pharmacy Department, University of Ilorin, headed by Dr. I.K. Bello. He's also the director, is a director of pharmaceutical services in the University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital. We have speakers that have been carefully selected today. They are seasoned professionals and they have excelled in their various fields of practice. These are highly knowledgeable people who are willing to share and impart some of the things that they know about antimicrobial use. So we are really indeed very lucky and we are happy to have them, and they are willing, very ready to give us what they know today. We have lined up, I'll be calling them one after the other to introduce them, and they are likely also to take their lectures in this order. First, I will introduce Dr. Bernard Ebruke. Okay, is the country director for research, International Foundation Against Infectious Disease in Nigeria, IFIN. And he is also the human health specialist, technical lead, Fleming Fund Country Grants, Nigeria. We welcome you, Dr. Bernard, aboard. We also have pharmacist Moshood Lawal. He is the in-country to Commonwealth Partnership for Antimicrobial Stewardship Scheme. You are welcome, sir. We have a very important clinician, Dr. Lawani Olufemi, a consultant medical microbiology from the University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital. You are welcome, doctor. We also have our own renowned community pharmacist, a pace setter and a professional par excellence, pharmacist Shade Lawal. She's a fellow of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. She's the owner and the chief executive officer of Victory Drugs, Lagos, Nigeria. Last but not the least is Dr. Ejiro Emmanuel, a fellow of the West African Postgraduate Pharmacist. Is the clinical training coordinator, Department of Pharmaceutical Services, Delta State University Teaching Hospital, Ogara, Delta State. I'm so glad to welcome all our speakers today. And I am pharmacist Busayo Elegbe, head of pharmacy, family medicine pharmacy, University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital. On behalf of the Director of Pharmaceutical Services, Head of Pharmacy, Pharmacist Charles Wakile, University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital, I welcome you all and all our participants to today's webinar. I'm wishing you a wonderful stay. We are going to need to set some rules all our speakers will be taking 10 minutes to speak to us on the topic before us today. And then shortly after, participants will have opportunity to make contributions. And then you can also send your questions to the platform. I welcome us once again and wishing us a wonderful celebration. Okay. So Dr. Lawani Olufemi is on ground. I understand he's on ground. Is he the only one on ground yet? All right. Dr. Lawani, can you unmute yourself? Please unmute him. Okay. Dr. Lawani. Dr. Lawani.
Good morning, Pharmacist Elegbede. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So good to see you again. All right. So please, can you go ahead with your presentation? You have 10 minutes.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. In commemoration of this year's World Antimicrobial Awareness Week, I decided to title today's presentation, Superbugs and Antimicrobial Resistance, the Nexus and the Implication. When we go back memory lane, we'll discover that the first antibiotic, which is the penicillin, was discovered by the gentleman we are all seeing in our screens, the late Sir Alexander Fleming, who in his routine laboratory in St. Mary's Hospital in London discovered penicillin. And this proved to be a turning point in modern medicine. As before 1928, there was this period known as the Preantibiotic Error, which was characterized by high mortality and morbidity due to the smallest or the simplest infection or infectious diseases. However, the turning point started with the discovery of penicillin in 1928. And since then, hundreds of antibiotics have been discovered, which have saved a lot of lives and have improved prognosis of infectious diseases. However, with the emergence of superbugs, a lot of scholars and researchers are of the opinion that the world and the entire mankind and humanity might experience an era known as the post-antibiotic era, which will be characterized, or likely characterized, God forbid, by high mortality and morbidity due to the simplest antibiotics, because antibiotics may not eventually work for infections as superbugs have become more prevalent in our environment. So what are superbugs? Of course, superbugs are not quite a household terminology yet, but the global health community is aware of the increasing threat of superbugs. Superbugs are also known as multidrug resistant organisms or MDR organisms. And these are organisms that have evolved through adaptation and genetic makeup to escape the potency and the powerful grasp of one of the most important and powerful medical weapons, the antibiotics. And of course, any bacterial species has the potential to turn into a superbug. As we all know, that there are increasing practices that are engendering and proliferating multidrug resistance, overuse of antibiotics, availability over the counter, etc., etc., irrational use of antibiotics. A lot of us, as clinicians, we are all aware of all this. So the World Health Organization, of course, is also aware. So superbugs, like I said, are multidrug resistant organisms. They acquire resistance genes through DNA transfer and other genetic mutations. And of course, like I said, irrational antibiotics use, are one of these things that cause the proliferation of superbugs. So why do superbugs, why do they matter? Superbugs, like I said, are a threat to humanity and to modern medicine because over time, antibiotics will not be able to eradicate or eliminate the effects of superbugs. Moreover, they have more virulence and pathogenicity. And of course, we all know the dangers of multidrug resistance, the dangers of antibiotic resistance. It worsens the prognosis of infectious diseases. It also increases hospital stay. It actually also increases the cost of treatment of patients. So in 2016, in September, the United Nations convened a high-level meeting on antimicrobial resistance, which only made it the fourth time in the history of the United Nations that a health issue would take the central stage or the center stage. And of course, the world leaders and health experts declared antibiotics resistance the greatest and the most urgent global risk. And of course, all of us, we understand why. In the United States, it is estimated that 2 million people will become infected with the superbugs. And it is expected or estimated that 23,000 of them will die of this infection. And of course, we all know that in the United States, they have better healthcare. Antibiotic stewardship is also important to them. Infection prevention and control practices are also important. They take those things seriously. So even in the United States, if they can estimate 2 million people, how much would be the estimate in a third world country like Nigeria, where we still have dilapidated health facilities and suboptimal health service delivery? And of course, it has been observed also that superbugs infections have been documented to be persistent amongst hospital-acquired infections. And of course, we also know that in the hospital-acquired infections are more serious and have more worsened prognosis than community-acquired infections. And of course, the man himself who discovered antibiotics, Sir Alexander Fleming, in his Nobel Prize of Medicine in 1945, also forecasted or predicted a period in time whereby too little penicillin, I'm quoting him now, will be used for too short a period of time, and the antibiotic resistance will develop, and thus allowing the surviving strongest bacteria to make a comeback. And of course, that is what we are having, issues of irrational use of antibiotics and lack of monitoring of the use of antibiotics in our environment. And that is what is happening today, as it has been estimated that up to half of the antibiotics used in humans are unnecessary and inappropriate. And of course, the general misconception among the populace is that antibiotics can actually fight all forms of infections, including common cold, which we all know are caused by viruses. And of course, we know that most of the prescriptions of antibiotics are to treat common cold in our environment and even worldwide. And of course, there's a huge consumption of antibiotics in animal husbandry, which is also part of what is engendering antibiotics resistance. It has been estimated that 80% of global antibiotic use is in the factory farms. And that is why we also have to collaborate and also bring this crusade against antimicrobial resistance even to the veterinarians and to the people that are actually in animal husbandry, so that we can all collaborate and focus on the fight, on the combat, on this combat against antibiotic resistance. And of course, we know some of these antibiotics, like I said, examples of these superbugs. Any bacterial species has the capability to have multi-drug resistance and, of course, become a superbug. But the common ones that we know in our environment include the methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, the Clostridium difficile, the carbapenem-resistant Enterobacteriaceae, the multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, and of course, antibiotic resistant gonorrhea. Others include Acinetobacter baumannii, Pseudomonas aeruginosa. And of course, we know that the last two especially are common in hospitalized patients. So it also goes back to improving our infection prevention and control mechanisms. So here is the deal. The reality facing us now is that superbugs are here to stay, and they are not taking it easy with humanity. They do not mind to survive and make humanity to be eradicated. And of course, we cannot allow that. So the epidemic is no longer a forecasted reality. It is a reality present with us. And of course, it has been estimated that by 2050, 10 million people will die annually due to antimicrobial resistance. And of course, half of that has been predicted to occur in Africa. And of course, Nigeria is the most populous African country. So God forbid that antimicrobial resistance becomes so much to overwhelm humanity and all medical expertise and experiences. So the WHO, having seen all this, has actually mandated all countries to evolve a national action plan on antimicrobial resistance. And it, of course, part of this is what we are doing today to create awareness, health talk, and all that, to discuss the possible role all of us can play as health practitioners and stakeholders in the health sector to help us combat antibiotics or antimicrobial resistance. In the United States of America, a lady died because of carbapenem-resistant enterobacteriaceae superbugs, which was resistant to 26 different kinds of antibiotics. So we can imagine having a patient who is infected, who has infectious diseases, and we don't have any antibiotics to treat. Even the antibiotics of last resort that we use around, the tigecycline, and even the carbapenems, the piperacillin, tazobactam, are sometimes, or most times, when it concerns superbugs, it becomes so useless and they lack potency. And so it's a nightmare, and this is an imminent danger that is being posed by antibiotics resistance caused by superbugs. And of course, another problem that we are having is that we have fewer pharmaceutical companies who are interested in developing new antibiotics. And it has been noted that recently the amount allocated to pharmaceutical companies to develop antibiotics have reduced. And of course, pharmaceutical companies are more interested to higher profitable endeavors, such as drugs to treat chronic diseases like obesity, high blood pressure, and other chronic ailments that they feel would actually bring in more money for them. So I think more efforts should also be put into research, funding, especially in the public sector and also in the private sector, to combat antibiotic resistance, and of course, increase research and development, and of course, training and improve capacity building. And of course, like I said, there's a link with superbugs and hospital-acquired infections. In most cases, hospital-acquired infections are contracted either from the hospital staff or other infectious patients, improper staff hygiene, contaminated surgical equipment, air droplets, etc., contamination by other things, surgical wound sites. And of course, we know that in our environment, especially in surgical cases, the surgery may even end up being successful, and we expect patients to recover. And at the end of the day, the patient contracts an infection, and the person develops high fever, develops sepsis, and of course, the person may actually lose his life because of nothing but superbugs infection that is being acquired within the hospital. So basically, we have a lot of roles to play, and we also have to make sure that apart from rational antibiotics use through antibiotic stewardship, we must also improve our hospital infection prevention control practices. So like I said, how do we prevent the spread of superbugs in the hospital? Rational use of antibiotics, proper hygiene, infection control, sterilization, decontamination, prevention of prosthetic devices infection, such as catheter device infection, of course, improve antibiotics use. So another thing we need to do is that we also have to document cases of multi-drug resistance, which I think will help decision makers, policy makers, stakeholders to know the extent of antibiotic resistance, and also to improve in-service delivery to tackle the problems head-on. We have noticed that there's lack of documentation in our hospitals. And of course, the hospital also has to improve sterilization of equipment, especially those invasive devices that actually goes into the patient during procedures. So it's very necessary. And of course, we can never do without reporting. Reporting is very important. And if, of course, reporting is one of those things that actually helped us in the HIV/AIDS pandemic. Okay, so reporting by experts, we make experts to understand the problem. So data collection is very, very important. And of course, on a global scale, the WHO reports also reveals that there are major gaps in tracking antibiotic resistance in many countries, including Africa, Europe, and Eastern Mediterranean. So WHO is saying that we lack data in this place, in these areas, in these countries of the world. So Nigeria is also lacking in the area of reporting.
I can't see slide.
So, sorry.
Okay, Dr. Lawan, you have 2 more minutes.
Yes. Can you still? Am I still on?
We can't see your. Yes, you are on, but we can't see your slides. You can continue the lecture.
All right. So finally, all hands must be on deck to prevent the spread of superbugs in the hospital, primarily focusing our attention on the challenge of properly sterilizing our medical devices to reduce hospital-acquired infections. Documentation is also important. Rational use of antibiotics is also important. And of course, we should empower the antibiotic stewardship in our hospital, improve on it, increase collaboration by all members of the hospital community, and of course, document all our cases of multi-drug resistance so that we can have data for research and training. So lastly, the combating antimicrobial resistance is a joint effort, and we all hands must be on deck to combat it and make humanity survive the scourge and the plague of superbugs. Thank you for listening to me. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lawan. You have successfully presented a picture, the superbug, what we need to do, how we need to stop the continuous emergence of superbug. I am very sure that people have questions for you. So please just hang in them for us till the time that will allow people to send in, we'll be asking you questions. Thank you very much once again. Very enlightening, very educating. Thank you so much. The next speaker shall be Dr. Bernard Ebuke. I understand you are on now, sir. Dr. Bernard.
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. We are very glad to have you. Please, can you proceed on your presentation?
Do you mind just give me a few minutes? I just joined.
Okay.
Can I go after the next speaker, if that's possible?
Okay, who else is on the line? Who else is around? Okay, Pharmacist Mashud.
Hello.
Pharmacist Mashud Lawa. Yes, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Are you ready? Are you ready while we give Dr. Bernard some time?
I'm ready.
Oh, beautiful. Please, can you take your Send your slides now so that we can
Please,
start
can
your
the pharmacist fellow share my slide from there?
Okay, Pharmacist Bello.
Okay. Okay.
Pharmacist Bello will do that now. So we will encourage our participants to send in their questions to the platform so that we can harvest those questions. Are you sharing the? Okay.
A minute, that's beautiful.
I can't see this line. I can't see it. Okay. Hmm? It's on.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
everyone. Again, my
Welcome,
name
sir.
is Moshi Olukulawal, and as I've been told, I'm a pharmacist, a clinical pharmacist. Currently, I work with the Commonwealth Pharmacists Association on their Commonwealth Partnership for Antimicrobial Stewardship. I also work with consult for the MTAPS, which is Medicine, Technology, and Pharmaceutical Services of USAID. And I've been doing all these things in collaboration with the National Center, Nigerian Center for Disease Control. So I've been involved for some time. I was the Director of Food and Drug Services at the Federal Ministry of Health about a year ago. So you are welcome, everyone. I've decided to pick these topics since I was not limited by just a topic, because I consider it as very, very relevant. That is the role of the National Drug Policy in the antimicrobial resistance, awareness, and control. I've picked it because it is not that we lack policies, guidelines, laws to prevent the spread of antibacterial resistance, but because over the years, rather than comply with the law, we have taken deliberate actions, either as professionals or common man, patients who do not know, a layman as far as medical law is concerned, to breach the law. And it has led us to terrible consequences. So that's why I want to call the attention of everybody and the whole of the nation to provisions within the National Drug Policy that we effectively, and if done, if complied with, we effectively address the issue of antimicrobial resistance. So please, let's go ahead. And I've done my outline to be that I will discuss AMR, which I'm not going to spend much on it. Global resolution, I'm not going to spend much on it. We all know it. But the real issue is the National Drug Policy and the Essential Medicine List. The Essential Medicine List itself is a product of the National Drug Policy. So as we move ahead, we all know about antimicrobial resistance, the impact on health, and the impact on the economy. So, but of importance to me in this issue of antibiotics is that the last speaker mentioned Sir Alexander Fleming, credited with creation of the first antibiotic, the penicillin, in 1928. In his response in 1945, when he was being given the Nobel Prize in medicine, he said, there is the danger that the ignorant man may easily underdose himself, and by exposing his microbes to non-lethal quantities of the drug, make them resistant. He was referring to laymen who does not know the implication of what he or she is doing. But regrettably, the situation has been worsened by the not laymen, but the really educated and enlightened professionals who have indulged in the overuse and misuse of the antimicrobial agents, thus worsening the situation of antimicrobial resistance, which in any way is not a new phenomenon, but it has become an issue because it has become a threat to global health and the survival of mankind, as mentioned by the speakers. So it is important for us as health professionals to do all that is legally possible and professionally possible to ensure that we comply with rules and regulations to control antimicrobial resistance and ensure proper management of the items. Before I go ahead, give me 1 minute. That when you talk of AMR, I'm a victim. Between July last year and March this year, I fell sick. I had to go undergo a surgery. That has to do with my kidney. At the end of the process, an implant was, a stent was put in between my kidney and bladder. It was a simple process when it was to be removed 3.5 months later. But that simple process got infected. And between end of November and March the following year, end of November last year and March this year, I almost lost my life to antimicrobial resistance. Multiple drugs, the fluoroquinolones, everything, Levothyroxine, everything was. After laboratory tests will have shown that it's sensitive and we have used the drug, you see it failing at the end of the day. And it was a terrible experience. So antimicrobial resistance is an issue. We should have that one in mind. So let's go ahead. I say I'm not going to speak much because these are known facts, just for record posts that I put them there. The global resolution that led to the global antimicrobial action plan, our own national effort, by 2007, we produced a NAP, which is expiring next year, and the process for its review has commenced. And that document is being implemented for a long since then. As we're talking, this is part of the implementation, creating awareness. Now, let's come to the main issue. The National Drug Policy was first published in 1990, and it has been reviewed twice by then. It has been reviewed in 2005 and recently this year. The first edition goal was to make available at all times to Nigerian populace adequate supplies of drugs that are effective, affordable, safe, and of good quality, and to ensure the rational use of such drugs to stimulate increased local production. Yes, all the goals are very, very important to us. But key ones there is that it must be of right quality and it must be used rationally, that is rational use of the drugs. So, and its key objectives are stated there to ensure efficient and effective drug management in the public and private sector, which is the whole essence of antimicrobial stewardship. To ensure equitable access to safe, efficacious, good quality and affordable drugs at all levels of healthcare. To promote rational use by prescribers, dispensers, and the consumers. To promote local production of drugs and pharmaceutical raw material through favorable policies and advocacy for local production. So we have so many of them. To strengthen institutional responsible for administration, legislation, yes, it's a very important one. Then to reduce the burden of antimicrobial resistance, this is one of the objectives of the National Drug Policy 2021. Now, these are the strategies laid out by the National Drug Policies for attaining its objectives. Selection process from which leads us to the production of the National Essential Medicine List. The national one, the institution level, and the other local state can decide to have their own, local government can decide to have one. Each health facility can also decide to have their own. Using the national list as a baseline, just as the nation has used the WHO model as its baseline for selecting our own medicine. Procurement of medicine is also very, very important. Storage and distribution. So, of importance to us here is the issue of essential medicine. I guess all our institutions have their own essential medicine. But before the essential medicine, and after the essential medicine have been produced, lists have been produced, it has to be procured through a process. This is where our problem starts. I'm not even talking of the outside world. Let me use Fela's language. Outside, I'm talking of the organized and recognized public health institutions. Most of the time, we have failed in the procurement process because we go to the wrong quarter to procure these things. We are not sure of the quality. Because the National Drug Policy encourages us to buy drugs directly from manufacturers or registered importers of these drugs. But in most cases, through the Nigerian, so-called Nigerian factor, procurement processes are compromised. And this leads to medicine of which you are not sure of their origin, you are not sure of the quality. The distribution process in drugs, one of the greatest problems that antimicrobial resistance issue and AMS will be facing in this country is the issue of undue and uncontrolled access to medicine by those who do not know anything about it. And until we solve that problem, we may not be able to achieve much with AMS. So these are the focuses of the National Drug Policy. Then importation. You are not sure of where we are importing drugs from. Some drugs are there in the market. If you go there, you don't see the necessary regulation requirement that says address, not postal address. You not see it here. But they come into our country, and they are used by our people. So now, let's come to rational drug use, which is item number 16 here. Under it, we have the issue of drug and therapeutic committees, which each institution, health facilities, is mandated to have. It is regrettable to know that even at tertiary health level, up to 60 to 70% of our tertiary health institutions do not have a functional DTC. And the duty of the DTC is to, sorry, I'm coming. The duty of the DTC is an institutional mechanism for promoting, implementing, and monitoring the concept of rational drug use in healthcare institutions. The NDP, that's the National Drug Policy, stipulates that each institution should have a multidisciplinary committee which shall be responsible, this is the question, for selection of medicine in the institution based on the Nigerian Essential Medicine List. Proper quantification of the pharmaceutical requirements for the facility, development and review of institutional treatment guidelines based on the national guidelines, monitoring the use of therapeutic guidelines and overall medicines utilization, monitoring rational drug use in the facility. Yes, I've decided to come to this slide because it's very, very important. And the World Health Organization, when it was recommending that we should have an AMS committee, recommended it could stand alone, or it could be a subcommittee of this city. Sorry, DTC is not this, it's not this city, DTC. So please, I want to appeal to everybody. I know the University of Ilorin has a drug and therapeutic committee, but from my interaction with them, they seem not to be working in alliance. No enough interaction between them and the AMS committee. So if the AMS committee is standing alone, it does not mean it should stand and perform its function without reference or without the Drug and Therapeutic Committee calling the attention of the AMS committee when there is need for it. And there should be a representative of the Drug and Therapeutic Committee in the AMS. So there is a feedback, there's a free flow of information both ways. You know what is going on here and you know what is going on there. So it's very, very important. I want to urge the institution to ensure that there is a smooth and effective and efficient relationship between the two committees. So I want to go back to the essential medicine list. The essential medicine list is so important. We all know why the WHO and the world created that list, that program. Yeah, the concept. The concept is to ensure that drugs needed by majority of a populace in a particular environment are available, and that they are easily accessible, affordable, and accessible and available. So those are the three basic things. And in part of the criteria for choosing a drug and using a drug on the essential medicine list, apart from being affordability and availability and access, is that it must be safe and effective. It must be in line with it must be possibly the safest drug that should be given, with the highest number of or the largest number of research findings that show that it is safe, possibly single dose, discouraging fixed dose combination, which unfortunately is ascribed into antimicrobial formulations in the country. We have so many, especially fluoxetine and what do you call it? Metronidazole combination in the country, which in most of the occasions are just given or are bought openly when they are not needed. This is contrary to the recommendation of the WHO in its access in our classification of antimicrobial agents. So we need to work against that. We should not form the habit of prescribing it. We can only do that if we properly educate ourselves and know the full functions and spectrum of these antibiotics agents as we use them. So please, the essential medicine list is also to be used for prescribing drugs in public health and private sector. The production of standard treatment guidelines is to be based on the essential medicine list, and it will be used in the DRF for the institutions. Again, another very important point is the DRF, drug fund revolving scheme. This is a good project which is as a result of the Bamako initiative in 1978 or so, or 87, sorry. Regrettably, we can only point to 3 to 4 health institutions, federal health institutions, that have successfully managed and sustained this program. Most of them are indebted to the tune of billions, and they have crumbled. So now, the danger is that you go to most of these our health institutions, these drugs are not available. The patients are forced to go out to go and buy the drugs of the quality of which they are not sure of. We know most of our people are at work, so when you ask them to go and buy something like ciprofloxacin, they go for the cheapest, which are not sure of the quality. You have ciprofloxacin, I don't want to mention brand, that will go as far as almost 2,000. For the same number of tablets, supposedly you have ciprofloxacin that will go for around 100, 200 naira. You get it? So there is need for us to ensure, as professionals, both pharmacists, medical doctors, and other health workers, that we resuscitate this drug development fund scheme to ensure that we make sure drugs are available. And the drugs must be sourced from the right quantity as a way of first guaranteeing that the fellow you are dealing with, according to a philosopher, has something to lose. He will therefore not indulge in the production of substandard or falsified medication. Another aspect of drug procurement and storage in health facility is that each health facility should have a mini laboratory to do a quick analysis of these products, especially the common ones that are readily used, to ensure that what they are is being recommended after laboratory diagnostic effort for patients to use are really the written and they are up to standard, so that we do not encourage sub-inhibitory dosing by patients. So we need to work on this. So the National Drug Policy also mentioned antimicrobial resistance to reduce the burden through antimicrobial stewardship. And the method to use for this is one, development of a national policy on antimicrobial stewardship. I'm happy to inform the House that the Nigerian Center for Disease Control I just finished a workshop on the development of a national policy on antibiotic stewardship. Yes, we should create awareness. We should strengthen infection control, which is very, very important, because if you stop infection, and this will start from the facility, the institution must ensure they have necessary things. The environment must be clean, water supply, appropriate toilets, and the issues of managing injectables and managing, what do you call it, surgical procedures to prevent infection like I went through. This is very, very, very important. Strengthening of surveillance system, which I'm sure by the time we have these committees, IPC, AMS committee, and the Drug and Toxicology committee working together, the issue of surveillance will be of important to us to do, which comes under information management, is the issue to ensure that there is electronic medical managing system, information managing system. If you want to do collection of research, data on microbial concentration use, you will need an electronic system. You make the job easy for people who are going to be informed. They go through folders, paper folders, and be calculating, doing all this. So we need to ensure that we have an electronic system, possibly with the inbuilt features for a surveillance system. And then again, we must promote the rational use of antibiotics, which it has to start from selection, procurement, storage, distribution and handling, prescription and dispensing. Again, as one of someone said of recent, at each institution, yes, it may be our primary aim may be to provide advanced health care, but it's also important to also be interested in research. What are the outcomes of the treatment we are giving? What are the factors that have affected the outcomes of this treatment? What are the factors that can make the outcome better? So these are things that should be of interest to us. I want to appeal to the health institution, especially since I'm with the University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital, that there will be need for the institution to obtain a copy of the National Drug Policy, which is on the website of the Federal Ministry of Health. All you need to do is Google the Federal Ministry of Health. You will see resources. In resources, you see policy document. Once you click policy document, a menu will come out showing food and drug services. Click it, you will see all the documents that emanated from the Department of Food and Drug Services. And also, likewise for other departments for which you may be interested. So I think with this, and I have to state before that being close to conclusion, that we must also realize that the essential medicine list is a creation of an act of Parliament, Decree 43 of 1989. So it may become an offense, a criminal offense, for anyone to go outside the essential medicine in prescribing or dispensing. So there will be need, though it is not being, nobody is monitoring it to that level and then prosecuting someone for ethical misconduct or even criminal negligence. But this is a very important point which we should all make. So I think with this, I want to thank everybody. I've tried to do a summary of my presentation, and I hope that it is going to have impact on the system. The essential medicine list, an approval has been obtained from the minister, I'm told, to go through it again and make sure that the concept of aware, which is a classification by the WHO, is incorporated into the essential list. So we expect either an addendum, or a new list very soon, incorporating the concept of aware. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Pharmacist Lawan. Thank you very much, Pharmacist Lawan. That was a very impactful and educating presentation. You have presented from the point of view of policies and implementation. I'm sure people have been sending in their questions, and shortly we'll be giving you opportunity to answer. Thank you very much. Dr. Bernard Ebruke, are you ready now, sir?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So you have the floor. 10 minutes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So thank you once again, and good day to everyone.
You are welcome, sir.
So allow me to share my slides, my screen, sorry.
Okay. I think you are permitted. You can go ahead, sir.
Just a second. All right, so good day, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to talk with the group. This week, the focus is on trying to improve awareness on antibiotic use, rational use of antibiotics, and to help stop the spread of resistance. So I want to thank all the two speakers before me. They've more or less emphasized the need. They've more or less emphasized the need for a closer look at our approach to this challenge of antimicrobial resistance. And what seems to be central is the need to strengthen efforts of antimicrobial stewardship. So my talk is going to focus on the current efforts to strengthen antimicrobial stewardship in the country, with a particular emphasis on the support from the Fleming Fund to Nigeria. So I'll just give a very quick introduction. I trained primarily as a pediatrician, and I also trained as an epidemiologist and infectious disease. My role is as a research at the International Foundation of Infectious Disease in Nigeria. But I'm also supporting the Fleming Fund country grant to Nigeria. Now, some of us may have heard about the Fleming Fund country grant and may have been involved in some of the activities. But what I'm going to present today is a little bit on what the Fleming Fund has been doing, and I will focus on the support for antimicrobial stewardship. So just by way of background, the Fleming Fund has several schemes. The country grant is just one of those schemes. So there's the Fleming Fund country grant, and then there is the Fleming Fund Fellowship Scheme, and then there is the Fleming Fund Regional Grant. So the regional grant, the focus is to support a One Health platform for improved surveillance of AMR. Whereas the fellowship scheme and the regional grant is applicable to regions of the world. So for example, in West Africa, there is the Fleming Fund Regional Grant that is currently implemented in West Africa. The fellowship scheme is a program that allows for professionals to apply and get onto the scheme, and then they get support and mentorship to get training in different areas of antimicrobial resistance. Individuals can apply. I think they need to be nominated through their institutions in their country. That's the fellowship side. My focus today is on the country grant, and the country grant is a pocket of fund that is made available to each country to support, to strengthen their capacity for detecting and reporting antimicrobial resistance. Yeah, so this is just a brief, showing the timelines on how the Fleming Fund country grant to Nigeria, what has happened between the inception and the planning stage from May of 2018 up until February of 2019, when the grant actually took effect. So at the same time, also the Fleming Fund fellowships, the first cohort started in that period, February, at about in 2019. So we're actually in the tail end of the implementation of the Fleming Fund country grant by the end of this 2021. So these are the broad goals, the aims of the Fleming Fund to improve capacity, the lab capacity and diagnosis, as well as data and surveillance for AMR using a One Health approach, and also to improve the regular reporting of AMR data, and for that data to be available at different levels, locally, nationally, and globally. Some of us may know about the GLASS platform. That's the WHO platform where countries report their AMR data. So Nigeria is currently reporting data to GLASS. The country grant, like I said, started in 2019, and we're towards the end of the implementation of the grant currently, is to round up by early next year. So, well, I wouldn't bore us with the details of this, but just look at the broad headings, which gives you the scope of support from the Fleming Fund country grant. So there is the area of lab infrastructure enhancement, human resource strengthening, surveillance system strengthening, and also foundations for surveillance data use. And lastly, which is what we are interested in today, the rational use of antimicrobials. The Fleming Fund country grant, that's the composition of the team in Nigeria that's implementing the country grant. It's coordinated by a group called DAI, and then there are partners within that consortium, including IFEN, where I work, International, the History of Human Virology, IHVN, and an animal health group called Livestock Management Services. So IFEN, I'll just keep this talk on IFEN, but in a nutshell, we are a group that is focused on infectious disease research, and we do have our strengths in carrying out support for establishing the disease etiology, including diagnostic capabilities at health facilities across the country. We have supported training of personnel in different facilities across the country. So again, just to give us some understanding of the scope of support which facilities are being supported. Now, if you look to your right, you see the human health, and that's actually facilities, not laboratories. The human health facilities that are being supported, you can see that University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital is one of them. There are actually nine hospitals, and then two of those facilities are serving as reference laboratories. That's Ibadan University College Hospital, and then the National Reference Lab, Gaduwa, the NCDC lab in Abuja. So I think I can go on. So this is just a picture of IFN support in Nigeria, but I'll skip that. So these are some of the findings from the initial assessment that we carried out in the country across all those sites, which I've just shared with you in the previous slide. Most of the labs that we visited, they were not in very good shape. They didn't have adequate space and equipment. They had frequent challenges with supply of reagents and stockouts. They also had challenges with SOPs, that's standard operating procedures, protocols, and job aids. There was also challenge data management. So one of the speakers earlier on mentioned the issue with documenting, you know, what we generate, the data we generate. There's challenge with that in many centers. So some of these challenges have already been addressed for those sites that we're supporting. So renovation has been completed. Procurement of equipment and installation of those equipment has also been completed. We have supported many labs to develop their SOPs and bench aids and conducted training for their staff, both centrally and also on-site at their facilities. And then we have also begun a process for mentorship for personnel at those surveillance sites and at the national reference labs. Those are some just pictures from some of the trainings we've conducted. This was the centralized training at Abuja. This was for laboratory personnel anyway. And the same thing. This is training on using automated bacteriology equipment to help ensure proper identification of the pathogen and also reliable assessment of the antibiotic sensitivity profile for those pathogens. So, well, this is a snapshot of, this is now looking at the antimicrobial stewardship, the capacity across different sites. In a nutshell, what you want to see here, if you can look at, if you just keep your eyes to the, yep. So Antimicrobial Stewardship Committee, that's the second column. You see that only three of the facilities have established an Antimicrobial Stewardship Committee. I've not included Ilorin in this slide, but yes, we are aware that Ilorin, they do have an Antimicrobial Stewardship Committee that has been inaugurated and is currently functional. So now, what are the next steps, or what are the things that are still ongoing? Support for consumables and reagent procurement, on-site training, and then support for surveillance for antibiotic use, and also support for ensuring that the antimicrobial stewardship program is effective and is functional at those sites. And then, of course, reporting of the AMR data, both subnationally, at the national level, and regionally. So I'll stop there for now, and then I'll just mention a few additional points. So the first is that the antimicrobial stewardship program, generally speaking, is a bit weak in many centers from our observations and needs quite a bit of support. Pharmacist Nawal made some comments. Pharmacist Mashood Lawal, he made some comments already along those lines. And there are some initiatives that are ongoing to support antimicrobial stewardship in the country. Mashood Lawal is working on one of those, CW PALMs. I think, in a nutshell, what I'll suggest is we'll try to make available information on support for antimicrobial stewardship activities. We'll make that available to the stewardship committee, and we will encourage different stakeholders in the hospital community to reach out to the stewardship committee members and access that information. I think I'll stop there for now and take any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bernard. He has enumerated support from Fleming to ensure antimicrobial is functional in our institution. We are very much for this, and at the end of the presentations, we'll be taking questions for you, sir. Thank you so much. The next speaker on our lineup this morning is a community pharmacist who practices in Lagos, but she's a professional by excellence. I'm talking about pharmacist Folashade Lawal, the owner of Victory Drugs, Lagos, Nigeria. You are welcome, Ma, on board.
Okay.
You're welcome. Yes, ma.
Thank you very much for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be taking us through as a community pharmacist. I'm happy that my co-speakers have done great justice to the topic. So I have very little to add, and I'll be coming from the angle of the community pharmacist. Today is one of those very lovely days when we are looking at a very topical issue. Sorry, I'm struggling to hook on. I think I've lost something there. My screen is paused. Can you see my screen at all?
It's still coming up, it's loading.
Yes, it's loading.
Well, I cannot even see it. Okay.
Maybe she wants to speak through the slide.
Yes, I need to skip my slide, but somehow I've lost.
It's loading. It's loading.
Yeah. I don't know what's happening.
Can you help her? Okay. Hello, ma. Hello, ma. Okay. Couldn't share. Okay. All right. We have lost your audio, ma. Can you unmute yourself, ma? Disable unmute her. Please, can we call her? Okay.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes.
Hello, ma.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I will take us through spread awareness, stop resistance from the angle of community pharmacy practice. And we briefly You cannot hear me?
Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay. So after just one slide, this introduction statistics, we briefly look at causes of antimicrobial resistance role as a community pharmacist in the fight against AMR, and then we'll talk about spreading awareness. I won't dwell much on introduction because a lot has been said. Well, suffice to say that AMR is likely to be expanded. As a matter of fact, we are already looking to see AMR as next pandemic. COVID just said, sorry, please, can you?
Yes, we are hearing you, ma'am.
Okay, it's echoing here. So the statistics I have here, according to the CDC, 2.8 million antibiotic resistance cases were reported in the US annually, and more than 35,000 people died. In a rational drug use survey conducted in 12 developing countries, Nigeria had the third highest antibiotics prescription at 48%, and about 46.7 to 71.1% of children under 5 were given antibiotics without prescription. We know that that's a big issue when we're looking at AMR. So let me also talk about a few cases that we have seen a few of the cases we have seen in Nigeria. A systematic review in Nigeria found marked common prescribed drugs for urinary tract infections, and there were high rates of resistance to ceftriaxone, ampicillin, cotrimoxazole. Most organisms demonstrated 100% resistance to ampicillin and cotrimoxazole, and these have been long used as first-line drugs. That means that we have a problem. Also, during a recent outbreak of cholera in Nigeria, resistance was documented to cotrimoxazole, sulfonamide, nalidixic acid, which again obliterates most of the options for antimicrobial-based containment of the outbreak. So many countries are moving towards vaccine-based strategies, and we have a lot to do here as a nation. Now, how does antimicrobial happen? We need to look at that, majorly through uptake of a drug, modification of a drug target, inactivation of a drug, active efflux of a drug. Now, who gets the blame? All of us. Yes, professionals, we have our own share of the through rational prescribing and distribution of antimicrobials, empirical use of antibiotics without adequate sensitivity testing, failure to follow updated treatment guidelines, insufficient medication, and then the patients to non-adherence to self-medication stroke use, because many of them have access to antimicrobials, so they just buy from wherever they can, use indiscriminately. Then poor hygiene, which encourages growth of microbes or transfer from person to person. Then, of course, the traveling, and then importation and exportation of resistant bacteria. Regulators, poor regulation by regulators, which promotes indiscriminate access to antimicrobials and circulation of substandard antimicrobials. You will agree with me that in our climate, antimicrobials can be gotten even on the streets. Some people hawk them.
Yes.
They hawk them on the streets. So that's a big challenge for us. And then the anti-vaxxers who go all out to talk against vaccines, which we know the value of vaccines have been used to get rid of so many, quite some challenges in communicable diseases. And we know the role of vaccines. If we are able to prevent the infection, then we will have less need for antibiotics, and then we have less pressure on the antimicrobials. Then the government compromised access to standard health care, poor research funding, suboptimal access to pipe-borne water and vaccines, and some other preventive measures. So looking at that, we'll see that all of us have a share of the blame. Now, I'll briefly talk about the ABC of antimicrobial stewardship, because others have done a lot of this history. Like I said, I'll be coming more from the angle of the community pharmacy. We need to acquire more knowledge and skills. We need to find out core elements of hospital and community stewardship programs. We know that Nigeria has a national action plan for antimicrobial resistance spanning 2017 to 2022. Incidentally, I represented the ACPN national chairman on that platform. So we came up with a national action plan, and we need to study so that we can position ourselves in it. Then the B is for us to be examples of stewards of antibacterial. And that means that as pharmacists, we should not dispense antimicrobials unjustifiably. We should get prescription for those that must be on prescriptions. We should be able to deter patients from picking up antimicrobials just because they think they should have it. Then we should ensure optimal use of antimicrobials, help our patients to get the best out of it, to adhere to therapy, to know when to take. Antimicrobials shouldn't be dispensed as TDS, BD, whatever. They must be on hourly basis. We should be able to help our patients work out the exact time to use their medications. Then we should also do medication use review for patients on drugs generally, especially when antimicrobials are there, so that if there are contraindications or things that will not make the antimicrobials work as effectively, or that would encourage adverse reactions, making them not to comply with therapy, we should just be able to help them out there. So we need to be more available to do that for the patients. Then the C is to collaborate with other stakeholders, and many of them have been mentioned by previous speakers. The public is one of our collaborators as community pharmacists, because we are the first point of call. So we need to have activities to promote antimicrobial stewardship to the public, and we can do that through social media. You can do that through education, giving them life skills to empower them to be able to carry out preventive measures that will not allow them to get infected, to enable them, to empower them to know what to do with antibiotics or antimicrobials when they come in contact with them. They can also use flyers or audiovisuals. And as community pharmacists, I can cite quite a number of activities that successfully we have done. We set up online WhatsApp groups targeting different categories, including mothers, where we give them health education and empower them to know what to do with medications, particularly, generally to stem or to counter misuse of medications. And antimicrobials are very key in this bid. We should also collaborate with other healthcare professionals, including veterinary doctors, like we have been told by previous speakers. A lot of antimicrobial resistance is coming from animals, plants, misuse, abuse of these antibiotics, antimicrobials in that sector. So we need to collaborate with them, help them to understand and know what to do with these drugs. Then we should also have joint antimicrobial stewardship programs with other healthcare professionals in the community, even in the hospitals, because the hospitals still reach us, their prescriptions come to us. Then we should also be advocacies to promote antimicrobial stewardship to government and other parastatals that can be of help, because this is a global problem and everybody is a stakeholder. Now, raising awareness on antimicrobial resistance. Specifically, we should help our patients to know what to do when they have wounds, how to clean their wounds properly, how to manage chronic conditions, how to seek medical care when an infection is they have is not getting better, they should have clear understanding of antibiotics and stop doing mathematics with antimicrobials. Some of them, when they are asked to take the antimicrobials, BD or TDS 3 times, they just, they take them anyhow. Some of them will just take all the 3 at once. I have had so many cases where they will come back to tell you what they did with the antibiotics. So we need to help them to understand that taking antibiotics 4 times a day means every 6 hours, and why it has to be so, and then work with them. Look at what time is convenient for them and help them to pin their dosage to those particular times and what to do if perchance they miss a dose or whatever. So we need to do a lot of education to our patients on ways to prevent spread of diseases as well. We need to we can conduct competitions and games on antimicrobial resistance in communities, in workplaces, in schools, in worship places. From my experience, I found that children are very good education people. I mean, when you teach a child what to do, they carry that information, they spread, they run with it, and they are very good people that we can reach out to. So we go to schools, no matter how young they are, we go to primary schools, secondary schools to teach them and empower them. And they also influence their parents when they get home. We can use flyers, we can use posters, TV screens, social media to relay information on AMR. In all, we should seize every opportunity that we have to spread the gospel of rational use of antimicrobials. So let me conclude by saying that all hands must be on deck to confront this, our common enemy, the superbug. Thank you and God bless you all. My references. Hey, I hope I was heard. Hello? I hope I just didn't talk to myself. Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Thank you so much, Ma.
Thank you so much, Ma, for that highly educative presentation. Pharmacist Folashade was able to talk to us from the point of view of a community pharmacist, and she presented the picture of AMR issues in Nigeria. Who gets the blame? And truly, all of us are responsible. She also talked something about preventive medicine. Invariably, we will probably not need antibiotics as much as we are doing now. And then she also said that we should seize the opportunity to educate our patients on the use of antimicrobials. Thank you so much, Ma. We really enjoyed your presentation. The last presenter today is Dr. Ejiro Emmanuel. He's a fellow of the West African Postgraduate College of Pharmacists, and the guy is loaded. He's the clinical training coordinator at the Department of Pharmaceutical Services, University, Delta State University Teaching Hospital. Please, let's welcome Dr. Ejiro.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Ejiro, you can
having me.
All right, you're welcome.
Share my slide.
You have 10 minutes, sir.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's loading. Okay, we can see it.
Click on slideshow.
Once again, thank you for
Dr. Ejiro.
Having
Click
me.
on slideshow.
Please, Dr. Ejiro, please click on slideshow.
I'm doing that right. I'm doing that.
Okay.
So the beauty of having so many scholars speak before you, that you have nothing more to say, but to do a summary. So when I saw the team, my most senior colleague, I saw that we're thinking in the same light, looking at the national drug policy. All it has to play in creating awareness and stopping the spread of antimicrobials. So a lot has been said, so I will just be flipping through the slides. However, before moving forward, I want to re-emphasize Alexander Fleming's words in 1945, where he said that the person, whether you be a prescriber, a dispenser, or a consumer, that is playing with an antibiotic treatment, even though he said penicillin in general, say antibiotics or antimicrobial treatment, such person is morally responsible for the death of another person who succumbs to an infection which has developed resistance to that antimicrobial. Now, having that at the back of our mind, we are very much familiar with the various causes of antimicrobial resistance that we mentioned. From the WHO website, we have this chart where overprescribing is listed. I will also say overprescribing and irrational prescribing. Then you have use of antimicrobials in livestock. And then you have poor infection control. All of these have been listed by the previous speakers. So just paying particular attention to specific areas of the national drug policy, looking at the drug policy item 1, the objective of the policy item 1, item 2, item 3, item 10 speaks to our interaction this afternoon. You can see that the national drug policy seeks to ensure effective and efficient drug management in all sectors. Then it seeks to ensure equitable access to safe, efficacious, good quality, and affordable drugs. Promotes rational drug use by prescribers, dispensers, and consumers. And if you look at item 10, it seeks to reduce the burden of antimicrobial resistance. The strategies were earlier also dealt with. I want to particularly pay attention to the role of education and training in preventing in ensuring rational antimicrobial use and preventing antimicrobial resistance. Now, education and training is key in the training of all healthcare professionals, both the medical doctors, the pharmacists, the nurses, all needs to be trained adequately on rational prescribing as opposed to preceptorship. What do I mean? A consultant prescribes in a particular way. The students, the registrars under that consultant learns that particular way rather than following the rational prescribing guidelines. So they finish their training also following that prescription pattern. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, we can hear you.
So it's important that at the training level, all healthcare providers needs to be trained on the concept on rational prescribing. Then communication, training in communication skills, both in pharmacy school, medical school, nursing school, veterinary school, on rational prescribing. Why do I say this is important? I give you a scenario surrounding the surgical ward. Now, I came in contact with a patient who has been on cephalosporin, to be precise, 2 grams daily for 7 days. Now, the physician comes on a daily basis, reviews, writes, continue management. Now, the temperature is spiking, the wound is not healing. I requested for the labs. The labs were not there. So I called the lab. We looked at the culture sensitivity results and saw that the organism culture was actually resistant to cephalosporins. They're sensitive to quinine. And then I communicate with the consultant, tell the medical consultant, and tell this patient has been on this, and this is what the MCS is saying. Because of proper communication, that was switched to the Quinolone. And in 2 days, the patient improved significantly by the 3rd day of discharge. Now, we've had some situations where you communicate, and the mode of communication causes a lot of conflict, and the patient ends up suffering. So education and training of all is key. And then rational prescribing is another very important aspect of preventing antimicrobial resistance. Now, rational prescribing means that you follow laid down protocols, first line medication, first line antimicrobials, second line, third line antimicrobials, rather than according to what a drug rep or a medical rep comes to tell you, then give you some incentives and you start to write that medication. No, that has caused a lot of problem in our health system. So this needs to stop. And dispensing also needs to follow standard operating procedures. The provision of drug information is key in ensuring reduction of antimicrobial resistance. And very crucial is the antimicrobial stewardship. I want to particularly commend the University of Ilorin Hospital for being consistent. I think some time ago there was a seminar like this on antimicrobial stewardship, and now this again. So you guys are doing very well. Antimicrobial stewardship cannot be overstressed. It means you have to give the right antibiotic for the right patient at the right time, the right duration, the right frequency. So this is crucial. So it's important that there is development of antimicrobial establishment of functional antimicrobial stewardship team in every facility, and there's need to create awareness through advocacies and jingles, both on TV, radio, and seminars like this. You don't want to rule out the place of research and development. Like I keep stressing, a good antimicrobial stewardship in any facility, be a community setting, a hospital setting, will decrease antibiotic resistance or antimicrobial resistance, increase cost of care, and it will increase good patient outcome. So I will always say, we want to stay smart when it comes to the use of antimicrobials. That is, we want to start off by choosing the appropriate empiric regimen. Yes, there is room for empiric therapy. However, while you do your initiate your empiric therapy, do not forget the place of testing. Collect your sample, start your empiric regimen. When that culture result comes out, say maintain therapy by engaging in target therapy, de-escalation, discontinuing of therapy. We also want to determine if what you're managing is an infection or a colonization. And then the route of administration, should you do IV or oral? Time is crucial when to stop the antibiotics. Do that as soon as possible to preserve the life and integrity of that antibiotic. Now, the situation we find in our country today, it's really, really pathetic. Why do I say pathetic? You have a situation where everybody have access. Everybody have access to antimicrobials. And as such, see antimicrobials being used indiscriminately. If you look at the National Drug Policy, it clearly stated that in prescribing antimicrobials or any medication in tertiary and secondary healthcare centers, only duly qualified and licensed medical practitioners shall have the authority to prescribe. And only duly licensed pharmacists shall have the authority to supply, sell, or dispense medicines, in this case, antimicrobials, to the public. However, there is a catch in the National Drug Policy, where because of accessibility, where we do not have pharmacies, pharmacy technicians and PPMs, trained and licensed PPMs, are authorized to dispense over-the-counter medications which do not include antimicrobials. Let's take note of that. So that in Nigeria, we have a situation where everybody have access. And there is this belief of one dose cures it all. After sexual intercourse, you take one dose of penicillin and they believe it flushes the system. These have created more problems than good. So when pharmacists play their role in rational dispensing, they provide adequate counseling to patients on, like Thomas Falashade mentioned, appropriate dosing, timing of the dose for the antimicrobial. Then these patients are counseled to complete the course of therapy. So when we stay smart, we protect the life of our antimicrobial. So in conclusion, as healthcare providers, it is our professional and moral obligation to ensure rational use of antimicrobials to safeguard the life of our patients who are fast running out of new alternative in antimicrobial therapy. So let's stop resistance and improve efficacy of our antimicrobials. In the west of the Rotimacor in 2011, without significant intervention, we are coming to the end of the day where 10 different antibiotics can be utilized to treat a serious infection. If we do not make it our problem now, it will certainly be our problem later. When we are asked what antibiotics to use for a resistant E. coli infection, our answer will be nothing. So we do not want to get to that point. Let's continue to ensure that we protect the life and integrity of our valuable antimicrobials. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ejiro. We are very, we appreciate the presentation. He emphasized part of the implementation of the national drug policy should be training of healthcare providers on rational drug use. And in fact, he said we should be smart about antimicrobial stewardship. Thank you very much, sir. So in this segment, we're going to be taking questions, and on the chat, we have quite a number of questions that are lined up for our speakers. So maybe Dr. Lawal, Dr. Lawani Olufemi.
Yes, I'm with you.
Oh, thank you so much for being very patient with us today. We sincerely appreciate you. Please, can you kindly take your questions now?
Okay, I have two questions. One is from Dr. Rahim Adewale.
Okay.
Where he asked about measures that we would like to suggest towards improving performance of Infection Control Committee of UITH. Well, basically, from my little experience about that committee, first of all, we need more goodwill from the management of UITH and the entire staff. Okay, because I noticed that there are lots of administrative bottlenecks that slow down the work of the committee. And sometimes too, there's duplication of roles. Okay. And of course, we also have to talk about the provision of personal protective equipment, which is part of what they are supposed to do, but they actually don't do it. They don't control it. Cleaning up the hospitals, creating awareness. We all see that there are lots of other committees or other sectors in the hospital that actually duplicate these roles and also, provide some hurdles in terms of bureaucracy. So more or less, it is the goodwill of the hospital community generally that will allow a free hand, for the community to perform their roles. And the second question, is from Dr. Williams. She talked about the empirical, prescription of antimicrobials, which is a major contributing factor to antimicrobial resistance, and what are the efforts that are put in place by ITH to ensure culture and sensitivity testing. Well, she's actually very correct. Over the past few months, the Department of Medical Microbiology has actually done a lot in optimizing the laboratory to improve service delivery for our patients. And of course, thank God for Dr. Bernard. He mentioned the role of the Fleming Fund, and the lab infrastructure have improved dramatically. They've helped us. We have collaborated with them. And of course, we also have other things that the hospital management has actually put in place for us, such as the backed alert blood culture automated system, which has improved our yield for blood culture. The Vitek 2 just came in some months ago, and training has been done. Vitek 2 machine allows proper identification of MDRs and the mechanism that the organism, has evolved to become resistant. And of course, we also have to talk about the problem of collection of specimen, which I think we need to educate the house officers and the patients as well. When you bring in a low yield or a low quality equipment specimen, of course, the results will also be of a low quality. Sometimes, let's give an example of the blood culture. Sometimes the volume of blood collected by house officers, is usually not enough for the bottle. So if you put that kind of thing in the blood culture machine, it may not yield much. Okay. And of course, the urine samples that we also have, sometimes they're usually contaminated. So you don't even get the actual pathogen that is responsible for the infection. And of course, a lot of times too, our clinicians, they always escalate treatment and they fail to review their antibiotics, even with the results that they have. So those are one of those things that we need to address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much. To pharmacist Moshood Lawal, pharmacist Ayetoro sent a comment. She said, I support you that therapeutic committee and antimicrobial stewardship committee need to work together in any institution in order to have a protocol for prescription of antimicrobials, and the emphasis to make use of it diligently, not only on paper. We thank you so much, Ma, for your contribution. That's the zonal coordinator of pharmacovigilance in this region. And co-chairman of the Drug and Therapeutic Committee, University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital. Thank you so much, Ma. Then there's also a comment, or let me say Dr. Bernard has answered some questions, but I want every other person on the platform to also have opportunity to listen to him. Dr. Bernard. Dr. Bernard, are you still there? Okay, one of the, from Rahim Rasaki Adewale. Okay, he said, I want to know if there is any policy document on the maintenance of the renovated facilities and the donated equipment that makes the hospital management responsible for good care of the donations. And Dr. Bernard responded, said, I am not aware there is such a policy document. However, part of the support from the Fleming Fund country grant included training on the use of the equipment provided and provision of manuals and standard operating procedures for periodic maintenance. The terms of purchase for some of the equipment provided also includes a maintenance service contract by the supplier and the manufacturer. Thank you very much. To Eloma, pharmacist Fola Shadelawa. Okay, she's gone. All right. Eloma?
Yes.
She's still around.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. There's a question here for you.
Okay.
The question is from pharmacist Susan Ayetoro. She said, there is a need to really curb the irrational use of antimicrobials among the people in the community. So our colleagues in your association must work on this aspect so as to reduce antimicrobial resistance?
Oh, yes. Yes,
Then
I did
before you
mention.
answer that, there's another question, okay, from me. I said, as a community pharmacist, how do you react to sale of antimicrobial over the counter in the community pharmacy?
Okay, thank you. Let me start with that, because
Okay,
that's
ma'am.
very challenging actually. And that is why I said that everybody has a share of the blame. When we get, of course, we don't sell, we don't give them such antibiotics. We try to counsel, we try to help them find alternative solutions to their problems or whatever health challenge. But some people even just, especially this COVID period when there was lockdown, some people just bought antibiotics to keep at home. Any little thing, they pumping antibiotics into themselves, into the children. So it's a lot of education really. And then we must just stand by the principle not to give it out without valid prescriptions. When you say valid prescriptions, because when you say you want prescription, they will generate something that is not a prescription and bring to you. So it's a lot and a lot and a lot of fight. I call somebody wanting to buy about 7 vials of Meronem abroad. You know, so we wouldn't sell. We just have to put our feet down as community pharmacists to say no to misuse or abuse of antimicrobials. And we are the ones that can do it. If we stand our ground, then we would have done a lot. But let's not forget that, unfortunately, the system is porous. There are other outlets. No, I recall during the lockdown too, if a client, because like I said, we set up platforms to educate, and somebody just chatted me, sent me a picture of linezolid and said he advertised it on a WhatsApp group he belonged to, and he wanted to know what it was for. I should confirm what it was for. So I had to educate him. I asked him to let me join that group so that I could reach out to them. He didn't allow me though, but I educated him and told him to go and them. So we have different ways. We just have to keep refusing to sell without prescription and then teaching, bringing it down to earth so that they will understand. Let's relate it to what they know. You know, the way antimicrobials resistance can stand in their way of progress and all that, then nobody wants to die. Nobody wants something terrible happening to them. So the more of that we do, the more we'll get there. I think that should suffice for the 2 questions that you raised. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma. We appreciate you. And Pharmacist Moshood Lawal, are you still there? Before we go to Dr. Ejiro, is Pharmacist Moshood on? Still on. Okay, sir. Thank you so much for being very patient with us today.
Thank you.
You had the comment of Pharmacist Susan Ayetoro.
Yes.
All right. I also have another question. You know, all over the country now, or let me say within our own environment, we see hawking of drugs on trays in the open market for tomatoes and onions. We find people selling antibiotics. Now, you talked elaborately on policy, the national drug policy. How do we curb, how do we implement, how do we reduce this menace, this activity? It's really rampant now. What do we do?
Well, thank you. Like that before when we were young. I remember very, and I said, when for those who are apology, but at least I'm not, it has assumed that up to 60 years before I. So, something like this in Nigeria before 30, 40 years ago. But just like the whole system collapsed. When were issuing patent medicine, all right, you can trace the address of the patent. But the man who hawks, he had a secret also who carry. So I think what we need to ensure we have us cannot be in politics, we cannot be to interact with the various entities of the local government. Market, they have rules, call it edict and regulations. With our regulatory bodies, with those who are holding, and just with the health sector, just like the issue of we need to know them in those, and no longer there, and in any environment. Based in learning, outside your teaching hospital, where maybe are recent, but when you go to the it's get our system work, and the only our own part is to ensure advocacy to these people that the decisions, the patronage at the interest. But that is what is happening. So we need to ensure that people hawking drugs is minimal. Possibly that aspect, you can get it. Another way to reduce, improve on our service must be available. Develops the area, can easily walk 500 kilometers, and he will meet the staff to him or her. Most likely will not go to the or go to or even go to a pharmacy. You can get the idea. To improve, if you want to be an alternative, effective, a little ways by the laws are there, but we need to also implement, we must present a credit to what we are saying. So we must stop brain drain. Is pattern. We know the number of pharmacy nurses we use to foreign land. So our very scarce resources. Ghana the necessary. It's a lot. The thing you have a large number of pharmacies and all those, but you may take the. But most states do not have doctor. They have about 30 general. I don't think they have 30 pharmacists. So which means they cannot even guarantee one pharmacist for one health center and one pharmacy. No talk of having them in health centers. So these are things we need. The only thing we can do, interact with the political leaders, carry out advocacy to improve services and the unsatisfactory practices of outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Okay. Does she want to speak? Okay. Please, let's welcome Dr. Mrs. Williams. Ma, you have 1 minute for your contribution.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much, the organizers and the panelists on this discussion. There's a question I raised that has not been addressed. Specifically, it's asking Farm Lawal.
Yes, ma'am.
Ashood.
Yes.
As regards the issue of the EMEL, as essential medicine list. How often is this supposed to be updated? What is the reality on ground? The current edition? And what are you doing, or what is the government doing to create awareness as regards the availability of the EML?
Yes.
Thank you.
Then your second question, ma. Hold on, sir. Okay. You can ask your second question so that the person to address it will know.
Okay, that's Dr. Ejiro.
Yes.
You talked about depending on what you are treating, whether infection or colonization. What approach? Can you expatiate more on that? Thank you.
All right, sir. Pharmacist must shoot.
Thank you, Dr. Williams.
1 minute, sir.
Okay, thank you. Medicine list by law and national drug policy 3 years or so. Since it's the first edition in 1989, we have the 7th edition, and so it means we have not abided by that period. We have to ensure that we refuse. So we have the 7th edition, which is and it is just 2020. And as I told you, it's being currently considered for review to reflect the AWARE classification of antibiotics. The Honorable Minister already given approval for that classification to be approved, to be reflected in it. Maybe by mid next year, we have something to reflect the AWARE classification. And as to dissemination, we've not done it for this edition. While I was in office, we did an extensive dissemination across the 6 zones of the Federation. And initially, we invited and they participated, various professional groups, all the necessary stakeholders. And copies were distributed to regulatory agencies, to associations. So we done a kind of sensitization, but from field work, research work, which I read and which I even did one of them long time ago in 2002 or so. It's not that people are not aware of the essential, but the problem is compliance, which was low. Awareness was 80% in one of the research survey I did, but compliance was low as 20%. So, but we need to continue the advocacy, ensure that, and that's why it is important that relevant committees in the hospitals and other health institutions are working, they are functional. And when done through, we call it training and promotional activities, people will be aware of developments. Because you see, the tragedy in Nigeria, so in the name of looking for means to survive, a lot of us are not even taking care of the tools for the practice of our protection. That is acquiring new knowledge, getting to know new things that are happening. We are still stuck to old medicine. We don't know whether there are new procedures. Yes. As you said, I got to University of Ilorin. I won't mention the fellow. And we got a consultant. He was completely oblivious of an essential medicine list. So how did he get to that level? So we will continue the advocacy and ensure that and this thing can be done by institutions, since the policy permits institutions to also have their own list based on the national something and even create various committees and the treatment guidelines. So I think the institutions also need to help us in getting this thing done. So that's my view. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Ejiro. Dr. Ejiro. Okay, he has left. Is he still there? Okay, thank you very much. We are about to round up. And before we do, we want to appreciate all our participants, those who are able to make it to celebrate the Antimicrobial Awareness Week with us today. We want to appreciate Professor Olufunke Shodipo for joining us. Pharmacist Eda Williams, all the way from East Africa, thank you. We want to also appreciate our fellow pharmacist Alege Ahmed, is a fellow of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. Likewise, Dr. Mrs. Williams, fellow Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. Pharmacist Ayetoro, Pharmacist Kingsley. We appreciate everyone for being on board today, and we hope that we have been able to gain one thing or the other. I would not forget to appreciate our presenters. They have been so wonderful today. and they have loaded us, they have incited us and educated us on the use of antimicrobials. And we pray that God Almighty will bless you and impart you and your family for what you have done today. You have not only created awareness, you have also created apostles to go out and educate the public. And on this note, we want to appreciate the Drug Information Unit for organizing this program. And we pray that the pharmacy department will go forward. The University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital will also advance. Thank you all for being here. May God bless you all. Amen.
Thank you.
Sorry, Pharmacist Elegbede, can I just make a comment?
Okay, ma.
For this awareness week, yes. For this week, we are supposed to go blue. Blue. I hope you are compliant.
Oh.
So for the remaining part of the day, you can still go blue.
Okay, and you are compliant.
I'm compliant, yes.
Can you drop your emails?
Please drop your emails for the slides. Then you can also check it on YouTube. You will find it on YouTube. Live. Everything YouTube.
Check the topic. Webinar for
So we celebrate you, ma, for being in blue.
Then please for pharmacy.
Bye, everyone.
I would encourage him to include clinical pharmacy department, University of Ilorin, for their dissemination, so we can catch our students young.
Oh, that's a good one. Pharmacist Moshood.
Yes.
Okay. Is it still around? All right.
It's around.
Aha, that's a very good one. That's a very good one. Please collaborate with the University of Ilorin through Dr. Williams on the point that she raised.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
May God bless you all. Thank you.
Have a lovely day.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.